Welcome in. It is so good to have you here with us. Just imagine you're sitting down with us in a quiet room, taking a breather from the noise of the world outside. Today, we are bringing you into a deep dive on an extraordinary contradiction, a massive shift that seems completely disjointed on the surface, but is actually rooted in the exact same foundation. Think about it. On one hand, the stock market is hitting all-time highs. Company valuations are just blasting past the trillion-dollar mark. But behind the closed doors of those very same companies, there is this cold, calculating math happening, where they're quietly plotting to lay off maybe 25% of their workforce just to get a slight edge in the artificial intelligence race. And then, on the completely opposite side of the spectrum, you have the largest militaries in the world firing off state-of-the-art supersonic missiles that cost $3 million a pop. And what are they shooting at? Handmade plastic drones powered by lawnmower engines that cost maybe $35,000. It is insane. So today, we are sitting down at the table where the leading minds in technology and geopolitics are colliding. We are going to look at the hidden physical costs of AI, the looming shadow of mass unemployment, the terrifying new economics of modern tech warfare, and how all of this is driving a fundamental shift in how societies view capitalism, socialism, and the institutions they used to trust. So take a deep breath, settle in, and get ready. Because today, you are going to see the invisible mechanisms of our world in a completely different light.
You know, when we talk about AI, we have this habit of picturing it as the cloud.
Right.
This weightless, abstract, kind of magical digital space.
Yeah, exactly. Like it is just floating up there doing all the work for us without taking up any actual space.
Right. But the data in our sources completely shatters that illusion. I mean, there is a statistic they brought up that it just blew my mind. Right now, 7 in 10 Americans actually oppose the construction of AI data centers in their local areas.
Wow. 7 out of 10. That is a massive majority.
It really is. It makes you realize that AI does not live in the clouds at all. It is this massive invisible city made of concrete and steel, and keeping the lights on in that city requires an absolutely astonishing amount of physical resources: water, land, and especially power.
So that resistance, the 7 out of 10 people saying no, that is because they are feeling the physical weight of it, right?
Exactly. They're feeling it in their wallets. There is a specific example from the sources about a data center project in Virginia. And these centers do not operate like a normal factory. They do not clock out at 5 p.m. They run 24/7, just draining the local power grid.
Just a constant massive pull on the baseload energy.
Right. And the local impact in that Virginia area was that energy costs shot up by 30%.
Wait, 30%?
Yes. 30% for local libraries, churches, community centers, and just regular families.
I mean, for a local library or a fixed income family, a 30% hike in utility bills is devastating. That breaks the budget. So you have normal people subsidizing the energy costs for a trillion-dollar tech company's AI project, and they get none of the profits.
Exactly. And the capitalist perspective on this, which some of the entrepreneurs in the debate brought up, is actually a pretty radical proposed solution. They are saying, look, if you want to build a massive data center, you have to bring your own power.
Oh, really? Like building their own power plants?
Yeah, exactly. Building small modular nuclear reactors or geothermal plants on site. And not just powering themselves, but actually contributing their excess power back to the grid to help solve the energy crisis they are creating.
Okay, that sounds great in theory, but, and I have to push back here, is this local resistance really purely organic? I mean, a local library getting a high bill is a real crisis. But to have 7 out of 10 Americans mobilized against this, is there a shadow war happening right in our backyards that we are missing?
Well, that is where the sources get into some truly dark, crazy territory. Because Kevin, one of the participants in the debate, actually put his own money down to hire forensic auditors and data scientists to investigate this exact thing.
To look into the local protests?
Yeah, specifically in Utah. They tracked the digital footprint of this massive opposition campaign against local data centers. And what they uncovered was essentially a masterclass in modern misinformation.
What kind of misinformation? Like Facebook posts?
Way beyond that. They found completely fabricated claims spreading everywhere. Things like the data centers were going to take up 40,000 acres of land, or that they were going to steal all the fresh water in the region. And when the forensic team dug deeper, they uncovered 90 pages of foreign IP addresses and thousands of bots operating across platforms like X and Instagram.
90 pages of IP addresses.
Mm.
That is not just angry neighbors on a Facebook group. That is an organized operation.
Right. And it goes even deeper. They actually followed the money all the way down to IRS 990 filings. Those are the tax forms for nonprofits. And they allege that the funding for this local resistance traces back to a massive network called Arabella. And the claim is that this network is backed by Chinese interests, specifically designed to stifle U.S. power development.
So let me get this straight. You have local town halls in America completely gridlocked, people arguing about water and noise, fighting through lawsuits, totally paranoid because of bot campaigns. And meanwhile, someone else is pulling the strings to just slow down the infrastructure.
That is the allegation. And when you contrast that with the data the sources provide on China, it is staggering. While the U.S. is drowning in permits and local zoning fights, China, under an authoritarian system, built 400 gigawatts of coal power in just 19 months.
19 months
Yeah.
for 400 gigawatts.
Yes. No environmental review boards, no local town hall debates, just a mandate from the top. And that creates a desperate race for compute supremacy. You see it with things like the new DeepSeek models. It is an entirely asymmetric race.
That is terrifying. And this asymmetric race isn't just happening on the global stage, it's happening inside the companies themselves, right? Which brings us to the human cost. Let's talk about the workforce, because there is this massive paradox right now.
Yeah, the unemployment issue. Yeah.
Right, because like we said, the stock market is at record highs.
Yeah.
But if you listen to the business community, there is this quiet, almost frantic rush happening. Companies are trying to figure out how to fire 10 to 25% of their workforce to replace them with AI, just to get that competitive advantage.
Yeah, and that brings up what Jank, one of the commentators in the sources, calls the doomsday perspective. His argument is pretty bulletproof from a macro perspective. If every single company cuts 25% of their staff to save money, we are looking at an unprecedented depression.
Because of the lost wages.
Because employees are also consumers. If
Yeah.
you fire everyone who buys the products, algorithms do not go to restaurants. Robots do not take out mortgages or buy cars. If you strip away the wages, the entire capitalist machine just grinds to a halt.
So then the tech billionaires usually say, well, we will just do universal basic income, UPI, right?
Right.
They just throw that acronym around like it's a magic wand.
They do, but the debate gets really specific about the math of UBI, and it is a brutal reality check.
Yeah, let's break that math down, because I remember that specific example from the source, and it is devastating.
Okay, so imagine a coder making $120,000 a year. They have a mortgage, they send their kids to a certain school, they buy coffee at the local shop. If AI takes their job, the UBI proposal is maybe $3,000 a month.
Which is $36,000 a year.
Right. So you go from $120,000 to $36,000. That is not just a pay cut. That is a total lifestyle collapse. You lose the house, the local coffee shop goes out of business because you aren't buying from them anymore. The whole middle-class ecosystem crumbles.
But, you know, there is always the counter-argument, the optimist view, which Kevin really champions in this debate. And to be fair, history kind of backs this up. Every time there is a massive technological leap, there is panic.
Oh, absolutely. The whole robots are going to eat the children panic.
Exactly. When the tractor was invented, people panicked. The Industrial Revolution, the computer. But historically, it always creates vast new productivity. I like to think of it like standing on the shore watching the horizon. One person looks out and sees a massive tsunami coming to drown them and wash away their entire life. But the other person looks at that exact same wave and sees an opportunity to surf it to a completely new land. So what is the optimist's surfing strategy here?
Well, the optimists point to the things AI can solve that humans just can't. They talk about AI democratizing education. Having an AI tutor that adapts perfectly to how a specific child learns, available to anyone in the world for pennies.
That would be incredible.
Or curing cancer. AI can analyze millions of protein structures and genetic sequences in seconds. But on the job front, they argue AI will create unprecedented new industries. They brought up NASA's announcement of a permanent moon base and the push for Mars.
Right, becoming a multiplanetary species.
Exactly. You cannot achieve that without the massive productivity boost of AI, and that endeavor alone is going to require hundreds of thousands of new engineers, analysts, space architects jobs we don't even have names for yet.
That sounds amazing, but let's bring it back down to earth for a second, because the nature of the jobs disappearing right now is very different from the past. In the past, machines replaced muscle, the tractor replaced the plow, But the human brain was always in charge. Now it's the brain getting replaced.
That is the scariest part, and the pioneers of AI, the people building it, are sounding the alarm. The sources quoted Sam Altman predicting that entire categories of jobs are just going to vanish. Dario Amodei warned that entry-level white-collar jobs could be halved in the near future.
Halved. That would push unemployment to what, 20%? That's
Yeah,
Great Depression levels.
easily. And then there is Elon Musk's prediction, which is just chilling. He predicts that eventually there will be a 2-to-1 ratio of humanoid robots to humans.
2 robots for every 1 human on Earth,
Yeah.
just walking around. And it's already starting physically. The sources talked about that figure AI humanoid robot.
Oh, the parcel sorting one, yes. They put this humanoid robot on a factory floor, and it seamlessly sorted parcels for 4 days straight. No sleep, no breaks, perfectly identifying and moving boxes.
And Steven shared that anecdote about the eThink accelerator in San Francisco. He saw robot arms autonomously cooking food and perfectly mixing custom perfumes. So it's not just digital coding anymore, it is physical reality. But why now? We have had mechanical robot arms in car factories for decades. Why is this suddenly exploding today?
That is the million-dollar question, and the answer is something called Moravec's paradox. For decades, the mechanical parts, the gears, the hydraulics were actually the easy part. But getting a robot to understand its environment, to pick up an egg without crushing it, or navigate a messy room, that required intelligence, which was impossible or prohibitively expensive to code.
Because you can't hard code every possible real-world variable.
Exactly. But now, with large language models and advanced computer vision, AI intelligence costs pennies. The brain is finally cheap enough to put into the mechanical body we've had for years. That is why we are seeing a simultaneous disruption of both human cognitive labor, like coding, and physical labor, like driving or sorting.
Which brings us to that staggering anecdote about Uber. The CEO of Uber was asked about AI automating their 9.4 million drivers. 9.4 million people rely on that app to feed their families. And he admitted that automation is coming. And when he was asked, point blank, what will those people do? Do you remember what he said?
Yeah, he said, I don't know.
I don't know. The guy running the system has no idea what happens to 10 million people when the system no longer needs them. It's just a stunning lack of a social safety net. And when you take that domestic economic anxiety, people terrified of losing their jobs, inflation eating their wages, and you connect it to global instability, the picture gets really dark.
It does, because technology isn't just altering the job market, it's fundamentally altering warfare and global economics.
Right. Let's look at the Middle East conflict, not just as a geopolitical crisis, but through the lens of everyday affordability. The sources point out that 76% of Americans are dissatisfied with the economy. And a huge chunk of that inflation is directly tied to global shipping blockades.
Because everything is connected.
Mm.
If we look at the Strait of Hormuz, it is this incredibly vulnerable strategic choke point. The debate highlighted that 48% of China's energy flows through that one narrow strait.
48%. Half the energy for the factory of the world goes through one tiny bottleneck.
Yes. And the blockades and disruptions in those shipping lanes are costing Iran an estimated $210 million a day. But the most fascinating part of this discussion was what they called the first tech war. The economic asymmetry of how these battles are fought now is just mind-blowing.
Oh, this is the part with the drones. I could not believe the math on this.
The math makes no sense. You have these homemade carbon fiber drones. They are literally using lawnmower engines. The total cost to build one is about $35,000.
$35,000, basically the price of a mid-sized sedan.
Right. And they're being launched at advanced militaries. To shoot down that $35,000 drone, modern defense systems have to fire advanced missiles. And those missiles cost between $1.2 million and $3 million each.
$3 million to shoot down a $35,000 piece of plastic. I mean, how long can that last? How long can global superpowers sustain a war where defending yourself costs 100 times more than the weapon attacking you? You don't even need to defeat the superpower militarily. You just bankrupt them by making them fire all their expensive missiles.
Exactly. It's a war of economic attrition. And that financial bleeding abroad creates massive political friction at home. which leads right into the massive divide over foreign policy and lobbying.
Yes, and this is where the debate got incredibly heated. And I want to make sure we present both sides of this exactly as they were laid out in the sources, because it is such a polarizing issue. It is literally tearing the country's political fabric apart.
Yeah.
So let's look at the two distinct viewpoints.
Right. So on one side, you have Cenk's perspective. He argues that U.S. foreign policy is fundamentally driven by what he calls legalized bribery. He points to massive political donations, specifically citing a claim of a $317 million contribution from the Adelson family.
$317 million. That is a staggering amount of influence.
It is. And the assertion from that side of the debate is that lobbyists essentially fund 94% of Congress. So the argument is that decisions aren't being made for national security, they are being made for the donors.
And he tied that directly to the military technology being used, right?
Yes, very specifically. He brought up claims regarding the IDF's AI targeting system, which is reportedly called Where's Daddy? The claim is that delegating life or death targeting to an AI has resulted in an alleged 83% civilian kill ratio. Cenk's overarching point is that this lobbying dragnet pulls the U.S. into endless, costly wars that are fundamentally against the interests of the American working class.
Okay, so that is one side. The system is bought, and it's dragging us into endless wars. But then Kevin pushes back incredibly hard with a totally different view of the geopolitical reality. He argues that you cannot just look at the money, you have to look at the actual threats.
Exactly. Kevin's perspective focuses on the harsh realities of regimes like Iran. He points out that Iran is run by a brutal regime of about 150,000 people who are actively oppressing 100 million of their own citizens.
Right. He views it as a moral and strategic imperative to stand against that.
Yes. His argument is that a nuclear-armed Iran is a literal existential threat to global stability. So when he looks at military action, or what he called military tenderizing, he doesn't see it as a lobbyist-driven war. He sees it as a harsh but absolute necessity to disarm bad actors, stabilize those vital shipping lanes we talked about, and ultimately free the Persian people from a tyrannical regime.
So you have two completely irreconcilable views. One side sees corrupt lobbying causing endless war, and the other side sees necessary force protecting global stability and human rights. And you can see how this massive ideological split is just eroding public trust. When people are scared of AI taking their jobs and they feel like their government is either bought by lobbyists or forced into $3 million missile engagements overseas, they start to lose faith in the entire system.
And the data confirms that loss of faith. The polling data shared in the debate is startling. Positive views of capitalism in America are at an all-time low.
Which is wild for America.
Truly, nearly 70% of Democrats and 62% of young Americans across the board now view socialism favorably.
62% of the youth. That is a fundamental pendulum swing. When people feel the system is rigged, they want to flip the board over.
And that brings us to the two competing economic philosophies they debated to fix this. First, you have mill-out economics. This is the belief that true capitalism cannot survive without a strong middle class. If corporations hoard all the wealth and AI eliminates all the jobs, leaving people with nothing, well, as they said in the debate, the pitchforks are coming. You have to distribute the wealth to keep the system alive.
Right. But then the counter-argument to that is the reality of capital flight. It sounds great to tax the rich to pay for the displaced workers, but if you push taxation too high, like the 50 to 80% race we see in places like California, New York, or Massachusetts, the wealth doesn't just sit there and let you take it. It moves.
Exactly. Capital is mobile. The sources used examples of massive entrepreneurs packing up and moving to states like Florida or Texas, where the tax rate is around 16%.
Right, because why would they stay? And they use that great historical example too, right? With France.
Oh, yes. When France tried to implement a 90% wealth tax, the French elite didn't just pay it. They literally moved across the border to Monaco. France lost the tax revenue, and they lost the entrepreneurs. So the argument is that excessive taxation doesn't fix the inequality, it just drives the wealth away.
Which leaves us in this incredibly volatile spot as we look toward the future. Specifically, they were looking ahead to the 2028 election. Because you have this deep bipartisan frustration with what they call crony capitalism. And they predict a massive populist wave coming. They even mention figures like Tucker Carlson potentially capitalizing on this exact frustration.
Because the frustration transcends traditional party lines now. It's the working class feeling completely left behind by the tech elite and the political establishment.
Though there was that one really funny kind of ironic point made by one of the debaters about the youth embracing socialism. Do you remember that?
Oh, about the first paycheck. Yes. He noted the irony that youth are incredibly idealistic socialists right up until they receive their first real paycheck and look at the tax deductions.
Right. As soon as they see how much of their own labor is being taken by the state, that idealism gets tested. It just perfectly highlights that lifelong tension we all have between the collective good and individual reward.
It's human nature colliding with macroeconomic theory.
It really is. And, as we start to wind this down, we have covered some incredibly heavy ground today. We started with the massive concrete footprints of AI data centers. We waded through the terrifying math of universal basic income. And we looked at how $35,000 drones are bankrupting military budgets. It is a world that feels like it is shifting under our feet faster than we can comprehend. But as the world reshapes itself around artificial intelligence, shifting global power, and all this economic uncertainty, I want you to think about something very personal. What is the one human skill or the one core value you possess that a machine can never replicate? When the algorithms can code faster and the robots can build cheaper, what is the spark inside of you that makes you irreplaceable? We would love to hear your thoughts on that, so please leave your answer in the comments. And if you enjoyed exploring these deep waters with us today, we would be honored if you subscribe to our channel to join us on future journeys. It helps us keep these conversations free and continually improving. Thank you so much for spending your time with us. Have a wonderful, peaceful rest of your day. We will see you next time.